We begin with NBC's Gabe Gutierrez joining us from Quebec. We have NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung here in studio, and New York Times trade and economics reporter Anna Swanson. Welcome to all of you. Gabe, you first here because the G7 is meeting there while Canadian ministers are in Washington. So talk about this urgent diplomacy to blunt this escalating trade war.
Hi there, Alex. Good afternoon. Was certainly a lot of moving parts here earlier today. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting with the Canadian foreign minister here. We don't yet have a readout of that meeting, but the stated reason, some of the stated topics are on the agenda. Of course, the war in Ukraine, as well as dealing with China and the Indo-Pacific. But looming large across this meeting of G7 leaders and foreign ministers is this ongoing tariff turmoil. Now, the Trump administration repeatedly making the case that these tariffs will be beneficial for the United States in the long term, despite any short-term problems with the market. They are downplaying the market downturn as of late. And just a short time ago, the Treasury Secretary in an interview trying to make the point that these tariffs will come down reciprocally if other countries lower their own tariffs. But here in Canada, not surprisingly, Alex, people we have been speaking with don't understand why these tariffs have been imposed. It's affecting already a lot of businesses here. One town that we visited, Drummondville, about 18% of the jobs there are linked to the U.S. And we spoke with one employee there about these tariffs. Listen to what he told us.
We know that our prices will go up a little bit, but the real, we don't know yet what will happen exactly.
What is this uncertainty doing to you?
It's giving us, we are kind of becoming crazy right now. It's going too fast.
Yeah.
On the morning it says something, on the afternoon it says something else. Our government is going to attack because we are in attack. We're kind of in a war.
And it is that uncertainty that is really impacting a lot of businesses here in Canada, something we hear over and over again. And Alex, we're just receiving reports that Canada has initiated a complaint with the World Trade Organization over the steel and aluminum duties. I understand that they did that back during President Trump's first term. But this all comes as Canadian officials say that they will bring this up to Secretary of State Marco Rubio here in Canada during this G7 foreign ministers meeting. And as you said, Canadian officials are also heading to Washington today to meet with the Commerce Secretary there to, quote, lower the temperature, Alex.
Yeah, we'll see if they can. All right, Gabe, thank you for that. Brian, as I welcome you, give me a sense of why these tariffs are being imposed on alcohol. What is it about this market? Because these are huge tariffs if that 200% one goes through on European wines and champagne.
Yeah, which could, in theory, make it 200% more expensive for people here in the United States to buy wine. Well, I mean, that's why this is hitting a nerve, right? And I think that what really hit a nerve is that in the EU, where there are major imports from of bourbon and whiskey, that tariff that they announced yesterday of 50% got Trump clearly riled up. And now he has this announcement that, all right, you're going to do 50% on our alcohol. Well, then we're going to slap 200% on your alcohol coming into this country. But I want to point out that when it comes to imports, I mean, this should be a no surprise to anyone. But we have France and also Italy as our major importers of wine into the United States. So billions of dollars here. We're talking about collectively almost $5 billion just from those two countries alone. So that's just for wine. So again, this is a really big deal, and I think something that is going to be part of this key negotiation as we go forward on the tariff topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna, 70% of Americans say the cost of Trump's tariffs, it's going to come from their own pockets. Most of the new import taxes affect our allies as well, our friends. Is there a broader and legitimate concern that our deteriorating economic relations with our allies will also hit American consumers and businesses?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a concern. So economists have been warning about the harmful effect of trade wars. It's true that tariffs can protect U.S. industries that they're designed to protect, but they also raise prices for consumers. They raise prices for other businesses. And then you have the whole problem of counter-retaliation from other countries, which damages U.S. exports. And you're seeing a lot of that this week with the United States kind of rapidly descending into these trade wars with some of our closest allies and our biggest export markets. So trade wars have a way of kind of snowballing, and the effect on businesses and consumers can only grow as time goes on, as you're seeing today.
So let's dig into this and the details, because the EU is targeting tariffs on items that it can get from outside the U.S. So it's not too disruptive for Europeans, but it sure hurts Americans. As we look at this list, I mean, it's a huge list to go through, but notably, just off the top, poultry, beef, eggs. Go down there a little bit. Women's and men's clothing. I mean, there's shampoo as well. So how prepared is Europe to follow through on this? And then how long before Americans feel it?
So European leaders have said that they will follow through on their retaliation. They seem to be standing very firm on that. We'll see if the president's additional tariff threats get them to back off today. But so far, they've said that they would go through with this. And like other countries, European leaders have been very specific in the products that they're targeting. They're targeting American agricultural products because they know that farmers are an important voting bloc for President Trump. They're also, many countries are also targeting manufactured goods in areas of sort of the upper Midwest or Pennsylvania, areas that voted for the president. So they're being very strategic with the products that they're hitting back on to try to put pressure on the president and Republican lawmakers to back off this kind of trade war.
So, Brian, the president today, here's what he posted. The quote reads, "The entire world is ripping us off." So the question is, and there's a few here, because it's his premise for this entire upcoming April 2nd tariffs, which nations disproportionately tariff American goods? Is it the entire world, as he claims? Is there proof of that?
I mean, there are some nations that do have average tariff rates that might be higher than what the United States tariffs them. But I do want to point out that this is very different, not just by country, but by a specific industry. So there are some countries where certain goods are not tariffed at all, and there are certain goods where they are tariffed at a higher rate. I do want to point out here that this is a very relevant conversation that we're having here with regards to, okay, how much are other countries tariffing us right now? Because within the context of those reciprocal tariffs that'll be coming on April 2nd, the idea is that the United States would have this blanket policy where if another country tariffs American goods at X rate, well, then the Americans will now tariff those goods coming in from those countries at the same rate. But that leads to certain questions. All right, well, if that makes the tariff rates higher for all those goods that are coming bilaterally between the countries, okay, but what if it's actually lower in another country than the tariff rate that we have here in the United States? I mean, if we just take the example of the spirits, alcohol that we were just talking about, if the United States has a 200% tariff, but the EU puts into place a 50% tariff, does a reciprocal tariff make them lower that back down to 50%? A lot of questions about the implementation of all this, which I think is getting a little bit lost in the rhetoric through the policy by Truth Social Post.
Okay. Do you think that 200% is going to go through? What's your gut telling on that?
Well, it's an important point to bring up because these are all threats. I mean, even the EU had acknowledged that this is a proposed tariff that could kick into effect in mid-April, but even their statement said they're open to reversing any of these potential tariff raises if the negotiations between the United States goes well.
So we have a month.
We have a month. And even, when President Trump posted on Truth Social, it's not that today tariff rates are going to go up by 200%. So people's wine, the prices are safe, at least for right now. But again, who knows what that looks like in a few weeks.